We are joined by Syrian Girl. And Syrian Girl comes from a former ruling class family that was deposed by a Ba'athist coup by Assad's father. She's 100% Syrian to the core and a career student, and also a model from what I've seen. And her YouTube channel is youtube.com/user Syrian Girl Partisan. So her family was run out of there by Assad's dictator father. And she's on national TV now, so her identity is confirmed, you know, in debates about this on Australian television, so we could tell you where she's at now. And she's been speaking out for close to a year. The proxy war using Al-Qaeda has been happening for 21 months. And now today, the Germans have voted to mass troops on the border where U.S., British, French, and others are. There's aircraft carrier mass, 3 amphibious landers, French landing ships, German landing ships. They're off the Med as well. The Russians are now coming to the table because they're in a proxy war with Spetsnaz, with U.S. Special Forces, side by side with Al-Qaeda. They are chopping Christians' heads off, throwing them off buildings, burning up and blowing up churches, killing the Jewish minority, and killing minority Alawites, which the Assad family's part of. And here's Syrian Girl, who is Sunni, but not the Al-Qaeda type that's 80%, you know, the 80% Sunni, a small group, is Al-Qaeda out of Saudi Arabia. They're there. CFR, McClatchy News covered it yesterday with the headlines that, yes, Al-Qaeda is leading the charge of the attack, and now it's coming to a head. And next stop is then Iran. That's why they want to get rid of Syria first. This is an incredible war crime. And it also speaks to the fact that the West is in a catatonic, brain-dead state, the general public, that our governments are running Al-Qaeda in a giant proxy war takedown. Artillery being fired in continually off and on by Turkey. Just unbelievable, full-out war. It's not coming. War is now. Syrian Girl, thank you so much for joining us. You've got the floor. Break down the history of this and exactly... I mean, this is so bad. Even though you were thrown out by the Assads, you care about your country and it being handed over to Al-Qaeda, so you're speaking out. And everything you've warned us about has now come true. You've been proven to be an amazing source. Tell us what's happening.
Well, thanks so much, Alex Jones, for the intro and for having me on. Well, you know, my family wasn't so much kicked out, but you could definitely say that they were kicked out of government. But we're not kicked out of the country, though we left, you know, because there was problems inside the country. No one can say that there wasn't any corruption in the government, and you can't say that there wasn't a dictatorship. But at the same time, you know, Syria is not as bad as they're trying to make it look like, with constant torture of children and all these tsunami of lies, as was described by the foreign minister against the country. And I think it's obvious that NATO powers have been, for the last 2 years now, trying in their media and in their vocalization by the governments like Clinton and Obama at the UN, trying to stir up the tension inside Syria, trying to create a civil war, divide and conquer, and eventually, you know, they hope to create a Libya scenario where they depose the government there to install an extremist Wahhabist regime. The Wahhabis are this minority sect of crazies that you were talking about that have the same ideology as Al-Qaeda. And, you know, as we've talked about previously, Al-Qaeda is something that the US created themselves, and something that many believe, with mounds of evidence, that it's something that they have always controlled, and they control now, like in Syria, and using them as proxy armies, basically, in Libya and Syria.
And now even the CFR, the LA Times, McClatchy newspapers, I'm going to show some of these on screen for TV viewers. People can just type McClatchy, Al-Qaeda in, or LA Times, Al-Qaeda, or U.S., you know, running Al-Qaeda or helping Al-Qaeda in Syria. They're giving them missiles, anti-aircraft missiles, thousands of them. And Al-Qaeda was in the news in McClatchy 2 days ago saying, we're going to come to America next and blow up your aircraft. And when they blow up our aircraft, the government will use this Syrian Girl to take my rights because the public is in such a coma. I mean, it's so obvious they're using Al-Qaeda to take over everywhere. It's just amazing. What is your take on the buildup now and the open talk of physical NATO troops who we know are there in proxy, like they were in Libya, and they're advising, now actually invading?
Well, I think with the terrorist groups in Syria, it's very funny now to see after 2 years of their terrorist activity, the U.S. is now, it's become so obvious that they have to come out and say, oh wait, yeah, they are a terrorist group. And this is to provide plausible deniability. And of course, they're going to probably use these groups later to maybe create another 9/11. Potentially the US people would be sick of these wars, and then they'd have to be shown that they're being under attack, again. So I think that it's a perpetual cycle. And we can see that, they use the same technique in Afghanistan, they're using it in Syria now by funding terrorism. They're also using the same talking points that they have in Iraq by talking about chemical weapons being used by a big bad dictator. We heard all that 10 years ago. So about the build-up against Syria, I think at this point that a lot of it is just psychological warfare. You see in the media stuff about the USS Eisenhower being off the coast, but I believe that the USS Eisenhower is actually going to go home early. So I believe that a lot of what's in the media is trying to build up such a fear and hysteria inside Syria to cause defections and to make people stop fighting. But I don't think it's going to work, because people see that the army is still fighting, and when the army isn't backing down, the army is still united and strong, the people will be too. So on the ground in Syria, I think that the army is still making gains, like they did in Daraya recently, and they successfully defeated an attempt to control the Damascus airport. So what you see in the media of the U.S., building, saying Assad is about to fall, that's not what's actually happening on the ground. And maybe this is a dangerous situation for the U.S. because they really need Syria to fall in order for the globalists to control the whole world, basically. It's that domino that needs to fall. So there is a disconnect between what's happening on the ground in Syria and what you're hearing in the media. I don't think we're at the point yet that they're actually going to do the physical attack. I think that it's still at this point psychological warfare.
So you're saying it's more psychological warfare as they've been doing in the past. You were on about 6 months ago, and you said that, look, they're going to try to claim that Assad's going to use his legal, lawful, which other governments have, chemical weapons, never invaded, never attacked anybody, never used them, and that they would have Al-Qaeda maybe launch them at Turkey or somebody. And then we already know they caught U.S.-made mortars being fired by Al-Qaeda on the border into Turkey, so Turkey could then blast out hundreds of square miles of areas with howitzers to insert more troops in. Now German troops are massing to invade. Unbelievable. And now Obama warns Syria about using chemical weapons, threatens consequences, and then magically some chemical weapons get used, and oh, we've got to invade now. Same WMD garbage over and over again.
Absolutely, and they don't even need to launch chemical weapons at Turkey. They can just let the insurgents or terrorists inside Syria use the chemical weapons themselves. And actually, there was a video that came out of supposedly of these FSA terrorists mixing chemicals, mixing a gas, and killing some rabbits. They filmed themselves, and they said next it will be the Alawites that are going to be gassed like this. So. The chemicals that they were used were from Turkey, and we know that Turkey's been smuggling arms into Syria. So it's absolutely, there's a potential to for them to just carry out a chemical weapons attack and use that as a pretext for intervention. They're looking for a way in always. They're setting up all of the they're setting things up to attack. Basically.
And the prostitute media in the back of the paper admits our government's running Al-Qaeda, but there's no news about the massacres, the killings, all of it. It's just, oh, there's some peaceful protesters over there. Yeah, the rebels too, who are getting attacked by a big bad man. It's somewhere over there. I mean, it's amazing that this is going on.
Absolutely right. And, I've heard such terrible stories about people being stopped at the side of the road and being basically beheaded or shot based on their sect. So it's happening all over the place.
Well, there's videos of it. They take Christians and Alawites and others up and chop their heads off, throw them off buildings, blow up churches. And, I mean, our government's running the whole thing. Very proud of it. And you've got Angelina Jolie there saying invade, invade, attack, attack, kill, kill, kill. It's loving. And everybody says, hey, she's liberal. It's loving. Brad Pitt, man, he's a cool guy. Totally sick. Stay there. We're going to come back and talk about it with Syrian Girl.
As Skynet continues to rise, most Americans have no idea the arsenal their own government is prepared to use against them. Walking weapons and unmanned drones that will find their way to U.S. soil if they haven't already. But the future is not written in stone. Join INFOWARS for the first ever drone mob December 8th at Zilker Park in Austin, Texas. This family-friendly event is to inform the public of the weapons that target us. Bring your own drones and spy planes as we make the statement that we don't want our weapons turned against us. Be there at 11 a.m. There will be some amazing giveaways and even a video contest. So bring your camera, because whoever films the best drone video at the event and posts it up on YouTube will receive 1,000 Federal Reserve notes. And be sure to use the hashtag DroneMob on Twitter and visit Infowars.com for more details.
Okay, going back to Syrian Girl, look, they're only getting away with this because the public doesn't know what planet they're on in the West. Total decadence. It is, but the governing class, it shows how really evil they are to go in and engage in religious and ethnic cleansing using Al-Qaeda and Saudi Arabian jihadis, blowing up the churches, all of it. So where do you see this proxy war going if it's gone to stalemate? And what do you make of the Patriot missiles being rolled in and the rest of it, Syrian Girl?
Well, I think the Patriot missiles is a step to create that no-fly zone, buffer zone that they keep talking about, obviously because their proxy insurgent army isn't getting the results that they hope for after 2 years. They need to protect them from air assault, and the Patriot missiles is a step to that. But on the other hand, the more that the U.S. arms their side, because it's like a proxy war, as you say, Russia's going to arm the other side, and this is unverified reports, but in Lebanese media, the magazine Mayadeen reported that Russia has given Syria Iskander missiles in response to the Patriot missiles. So again, it's like steps towards a third world war. I know that in the media, Russia, you can't really read which way it's going, but I think that it's very plausible that Syria now has Iskander missiles in its wares, because where else would the reports come from? I think that it's a very dangerous situation for the world to be in, for everybody who's concerned, because Syria isn't Libya, as people say. Syria does have the potential to really cause damage to its enemies. And I think in some ways, NATO and the powers that be know that, and they're afraid of that.
How long can, from your well-researched view and talking to your family who's been in government there, how long can Syria hold out against the Al-Qaeda brigades and U.S. Special Forces?
Well, if things stay as they are now, it can hold out maybe indefinitely, and that's also sad to say, because the destruction of Syria is just going to be ongoing. But at the end, if things are as they are now, Syria will emerge victorious. That's why they need to change the rules of the game. That's why they need to inject a no-fly zone and talk about maybe troops being in or launching some kind of offensive on Syria, because as it is now, they're losing.
Well, by the way, I agree. And when you get even mainstream news going, why are we backing Al-Qaeda? If America would just wake up and be moral in Europe, shame on the French. They're the ones leading this. I mean, just absolutely disgusting. This country is just getting crazy. They're taking Christmas trees, crosses down everywhere. Our government runs Al-Qaeda. They're going to launch giant new taxes on everybody to pay to foreign banks. Syrian Girl, we got 5 minutes left before Lord Moncton comes on. I know you are really an expert on all this. Where do you see it all going, and what are other points you'd like to relay to people?
Well, I want to relate to people, I think in the U.S. media, all they hear about is government atrocities in Syria. And I want to say, straight out, when you create a civil war in a country, of course, there's going to be some casualties caused by both sides. You have the army and these FSA, and they're both heavily armed. And of course, this is absolutely true. But the media, the mainstream media, is not pointing to the atrocities that are being committed by these FSA terrorists. And because it shows that these people are no alternative. They're not democratic at all. I mean, for example, they got together, all the groups, and declared openly that they don't want a democracy. They want to impose Sharia law on Syria. And even though Syria is a Muslim country, that doesn't necessarily mean that they all want to be forced to live under someone else's version of Islam. So in Idlib, where the FSA are all concentrated right now, it's one of the outskirts suburbs of Aleppo. They've actually opened up morality courts already, and they're already, sort of pushing people around and telling them how they should worship their God, basically. And to get into the atrocities, also this week, recently there's been video that's come out of them executing unarmed prisoners, and this is supposed to be the new democratic free Syria that they're pushing onto Syria.
And you better believe when the Syrian army gets captured and they get killed, they're going to fight really hard too. And I hear it. Anytime they fight back, it's called atrocities. And there's never a discussion of Al-Qaeda going in on record and telling fathers, we're going to kill your family if you don't go suicide bomb. I mean, that's on record. This is so evil.
Well, there's been so many car bombings in Damascus, in the areas that don't see any fighting. You see all these car bombings happening. And I think that also, these FSA people, they're pushing people out of their homes, and they actually have been burning stores because they don't want to see stores open. They want to see people striking and basically shutting the country down. My family back home told me that they only get now, they get 6 hours of electricity switched off because they attacked the power stations. Also, they launched mortars at peaceful areas and recently killed 9 students and a teacher because of the mortars. So also when they burned, but the people, they're still very resilient. When they've burnt all these stores, they've gone into the areas that are controlled by the army and set up the stores again in a makeshift way. And you can see videos of that on a website called Syrian News CC. It's just very courageous and heartwarming to see people, still going strong, and the economy still going.
That's what I was going to ask you. What about the Syrians themselves? From what I've been reading in the foreign news, they're really, even people that didn't like Assad are starting to rally around them because they understand their whole country's about to be handed over to Al-Qaeda.
Absolutely. Al-Qaeda and the globalists. So Syrian people, putting aside what you believe of your government, when your country is directly under attack and your families are threatened, you have to rely on your army to defend you. And Syrian people, no matter what they think of their government, they're going to support the soldiers that are not going out and attacking other nations, but they're defending the homeland. So,
yeah, the Syrians are fighting hard against special forces of at least 10 nations backing Al-Qaeda brigades. It is unbelievable. And our troops are standing by. The CIA is there advising them, burning churches. No one's ever kicked the Christian church in 2,000 years out of Syria, but the U.S. government is under New World Order control. Pure evil. Syrian Girl, we will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining us.